Well, crisis communication is the ability to enact some sort of control over the prevention, mitigating the response, and also learning from a crisis. And a crisis can be defined as many different things. In fact, there's a lot of different discussions going on what is defined as a crisis. But basically, a crisis is anything that directly affects an organization, that the organization has to kind of change a little bit in order to respond to it, to mitigate it. But crises are also something that you can learn from as well. Responding during a crisis, two things to keep in mind. Number one, that you want to respond as quickly as possible. And number two is that you want to respond as accurately as possible. So timeliness and accuracy are two of the most important things to remember in responding to a crisis. I'd also like to add in making sure that you're responding to the direct audiences. All the audiences that need to hear a response from this crisis need to be addressed as soon as possible. And so knowing how to respond accurately and timely, since those are so very important, and making sure that you respond to all the audiences that you need to respond during a crisis, it's therefore very important to have a proactive, a crisis prevention plan so that you're not reactive and trying to figure out what to do, and you're able to pick up that plan and immediately respond accurately and timely during a crisis situation. My research, I actually looked into, I actually kind of partnered two of my passions, and those are nonprofit work with kind of crisis communication and issues management. And what I look specifically at is how nonprofit organizations, especially in the Florida Panhandle, how they were able to communicate and how they were able to handle the crisis situation of the oil spill. And what I found is that these organizations, although they were not quote unquote directly hit, quote unquote, but they were offering services to the public that were directly hit. So therefore, they absolutely had to go to their crisis communication plans, and they had to determine how best to communicate with a lot of these audiences. And what they found, especially with the oil spill, is that people were coming to them to make sure that they had accurate information, to make sure that the information that they were receiving from media, from social media, was correct. So the general public and the folks that were getting services from these nonprofits truly looked at these nonprofit organizations as almost opinion leaders and folks that could make sure that the information that these general public was hearing from different sources, such as the media, was indeed accurate information. So from this, we've learned that when looking at a crisis situation, a lot of times we look at it very directly from the individual organization. Who caused it? How did this happen? How can we keep it from happening again? But one of the things that some of the stuff that we have done with Healthy Gulf, Healthy Communities is you got to look at the whole picture. That it's not just the organization and the public and the audiences that were directly affected by a crisis, but you've got to include these other organizations and these other opinion leaders and these other service organizations that are offering services and figure out what role they played in this crisis. So in studying crisis communication and thinking about how to respond accurately and timely, look beyond just the general public and the audiences, but include some of those nonprofit organizations, some of those governmental agencies, because these people are also communicating with your audiences, and it's very important that you partner with them in making sure that the direct key messages get out to the right people. Some of the biggest mistakes that you see, again, going back to those two key things when responding to a crisis. Number one, you want to report as quickly as possible, and you want to report as timely as possible. And I like to say, media is your friend. Again, you've got a key message, you've got a response that you want to get out to your audiences and your key audiences, and the media can help you do that. So working with them as a partnership, understanding how the media works. Again, if they hear of a crisis, they're calling you immediately. Be ready for that call. Be ready. Have your list together of what you need the media to have out there, what key messages you need to have out there. But not only whoever your spokesperson is, if you have a PR person or somebody that's going to act as your spokesperson, but you need to have other key folks that are going to be out there trying to respond to the crisis also know these key messages, because media will go wherever they can to get some information. So you want to make sure that your organization all is on the same page with those same key messages. Another thing that I hear a lot of times, and again, it's going back to that reporting timely and accurately. A lot of times people will say no comment during a crisis. Well, and that right there is usually just saying, we did it, we're at fault. And so what I tell people a lot of time is instead of saying no comment, just simply tell them why. I can't answer that question for you right now because we don't have all the information. But if you get me your name and number, I will get this information to you as soon as possible. And do it. Because especially if it's a newspaper or if it's a TV station, this is something that they are going to go back and edit before it goes live. And so therefore, you getting that information back to them as soon as possible, they'll be able to add it back into their story. So they appreciate that you're going to do the research to find an answer to that question. If it's a question that you can't answer based upon, family, maybe someone unfortunately was hurt and the family was not informed yet, that's something you want to say. We can't release that information yet because we've not informed the family or because of HIPAA laws or whatever. But just be open and honest with the media and work with them. They are a partner in helping you get those key messages out during a crisis. So don't look at them as an adversary and look at them as a partner. Social media and responding to a crisis become extremely important. I know with my own research, a lot of things that some of the folks that we talked to said that we would hear these things on social media. We didn't know if it was true or not. And so what we were hearing on social media was completely different from what we were hearing on another media. So therefore, using your social media in combination with these other tactics that you're using, say for instance, you've got something out on your Twitter, you've got something out on Facebook, maybe also follow it up with a press release where those key messages are all the same. So using social media as part of your overall plan, but not changing those key messages at all. Otherwise, you're going to confuse people, and also you're going to lose credibility. If you're saying one thing on your social media and you're saying something different they're reading in the newspaper or they're seeing on a report later on, you're going to lose the credibility. And so you want to make sure those key messages are the same across the board. But absolutely, especially like I said, with using that response quickly and accurately, social media allows you to respond like that. And that's the first place people are going to look now during a crisis. They're going to look at your Twitter feed. They're going to look at your Facebook. So be sure that when you're putting together your crisis communication plan, that social media is right there. If you do a dark site that you put up during a crisis, a website that you put up during a crisis, be sure that your social media links all go to that website so that you can keep that website as timely as possible and maybe manage your social media through that website as well.
I'd say that probably every experience is different, but you want to make sure, as far as being when you're tasked with communicating to the public in a crisis or issues-related situation, that you bring together the people who have the accurate information. So as a company spokesperson or as the public relations representative, you're not always going to have all of the information just right at your fingertips. But you need to have access to the people who know the information. So you want to have access to your executives, you want to have access to your product experts, to issues experts. And at Yamaha, I've been very fortunate to have good access and good open communications with those people. So you want to make sure that you have a plan in place in advance, but then that everybody is accessible. And so in a situation where there is some news that you need to address quickly, you're able to reach out to people to acquire all the important and accurate information that you can, then to provide that to a journalist, for example, in a timely manner.